I'm telling you, it's the biggest factor. And I think it leads to bringing in other CMIT owners, like brand new people that understand that value.
Mhm.
And there's this culture of helping each other. It gives me nothing to help a brand new owner, zero. And you do it because you want to see them succeed. Because again, the more successful everybody is, the more successful everybody is.
Hello and welcome to the Tracer Franchising Podcast, where we interview great franchisors and franchisees so we can learn about their story and learn a little bit if might be the right path for you. Today, I have Leslie Chiorazzi. She's a CMIT owner. She's been around for 10 years, doing really well. So I'm excited to have you here and learn
I'm
about your
excited to be
experience.
here, Josh.
Cool. So could you tell us just a little bit about, the background first of like where you are, about the franchise a little bit, and then we'll get into your background before the franchise.
Course. So I've been a CMIT solutions owner for the last 10 years, just about. And I am in the middle of New York City. My territory is Murray Hill, which is pretty much one zip code and the Chrysler building. I super grateful to be a franchise owner, and obviously we'll get into the details of that. But I am looking out my window at Madison Square Garden, so that's where I reside currently. Our office space is there.
That's so cool. Um, we'll get into it more, but it's just like the density of New York is so different from like anybody else I've ever spoken with. So I'm very interested to learn more about that. But first, could you tell us about you? Like, tell us your background before you even started looking at franchising.
So what's so crazy is that, and for me, especially in the IT business, I have zero background in IT or any technical service degree or, software engineering or computer science, none of that. I went to FIT right in my neighborhood here. So I usually tell prospective clients that either I dress well to meetings or I take the F out of IT. That's the best way to describe it. So I have really no business in this business. I can only say that I'm in the service industry. I've always been in the service industry. And I think that's what leads me to being successful in this business. And it could have been probably any business, except everybody needs IT. Everybody has the need for technology in the business, whether you're a restaurant, to a doctor's office, to a manufacturer.
So no IT. What's like? So what were you doing before?
So I think I have a pretty cool story, and it might not resonate with everyone, but I worked for my family business for almost 20 years. And anybody who's worked in family business might relate to the fact that you will always be that person's child, nephew, cousin, sister. So it's hard for me to kind of state my case sometimes, but I got a lot of experience. My mother owned the business. I learned a lot about being an entrepreneur, both the struggles and the successes. And then I worked for someone that I knew from that business in a startup, building websites and selling search engine optimization basically in the healthcare system because I came out of a healthcare business. So I knew a lot of dentists and optometrists, and I went to work for another company, which I stayed with for about 8 years. And my my husband and I were looking for an investment at the time and checking out all different types of franchises. I was always my plan to kind of run it, would be the managing partner, and his to kind of be the advisor investor and stay full time where he was. And that's kind of what led us to the CMIT opportunity.
Very cool. Very cool. So, um, let's talk about how you, I guess, came across franchising, right? So you're comfortable in business, right? But I feel like you could have used that to start your own healthcare business or whatever, right? So, like, what even made you start looking at franchising in general?
So I think probably the broker. I think having someone out there understanding where you are in your career, where your strengths are, things like that, enabled us to look at a bunch of different opportunities that were both within our price range for an investment, along with had something that we felt like we could cultivate
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah.
And my ex-husband, who's not my ex-husband, was in more of the technology space, and I was always in service sales. So when I came across CMIT, it was through the broker, and I had the opportunity to buy a brand new territory or buy an existing territory that had a few clients.
Uh,
And that's kind of what started the ball. And it's kind of interesting because timing is always a factor in these things. But having some experience in this industry and not needing a real footprint. I didn't have office space for the first 7 years of my business, and I was able to run it like from home. And that led it to kind of why I chose the opportunity versus more of a structured location where I had to be in every day, or a retail type of franchise space.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay. And then is there a reason why, I mean, even before CMIT, like, how come you didn't just go start your own business, right? Like, you were in a startup, you were in a family business. What made you want to be part of a franchise?
So I think my initial idea was not to be part of a franchise. I think what made me want to move on in my career was I worked for someone I really respected. I thought their ideas were great. I really enjoyed. Um, I had a lot of success in that business, especially as a startup. The timing was just spectacular. It was back when people's pushback to building a website was still, well, I have a Yellow Pages ad, and you're like, I mean, I live in a building full of senior citizens, and nobody picked up the Yellow Pages after a while. Now there really is no Yellow Pages. So that was the pushback. Or they'd say, "Well, I've been a dentist in this area for 30 years." And you'd be like, "So wait, nobody new moves in that's looking up a dentist? No one wants to know when you're open or what type of services you provide?" So it was really an interesting startup because a lot of it had to do with timing. And but I had come from my own family business to working in somebody else's family business. So I didn't have the inside track in the same way. And I really was stunted in my ability to be creative. And I like to put out ideas. And, I wanted to be involved in things we were growing and the direction the company was taking. And it really kind of wasn't my place. And I wasn't allowed to the point where, like, instead of giving ideas, I started snapping a rubber band um, because my boss just couldn't hear it from me. And it led me to think, I don't know if I'm really being appreciated in this space in the way I might enjoy. Like, I think most entrepreneurs really appreciate a creative staff or staff who treats it like it's their own business. I certainly know I do. And it's one of the biggest things I do with my own team is really to be collaborative, to promote them and giving me ideas. We might not fulfill all those ideas. We might not use all those ideas, but never should they ever feel like they can't come to me and say, I was thinking that we should do this. And they're rewarded for that. Like
Mhm.
every week that we huddle, if somebody comes up with a proactive idea, I actually financially reward them for it when we implement something. And I couldn't do that in the job I was working in. It was really a job. And um, I had a hard time like being myself. And it just led to the discontent that pushed me further into just wanting to do my own thing. I would never have started my own IT business, like hang a shingle and start Leslie's IT. So the framework that the franchise allowed was really something I had like never thought of, heard about. Um, so that was kind of interesting. It was like just a unique opportunity. It wasn't necessarily um, like, oh, I have to be a franchise, but I loved the idea when I heard it.
Okay, very cool. And so you had the opportunity to buy one or to start new. What would you choose?
I bought the one that had clients,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially when I kind of understood. So Times Square was the opportunity. Everybody in the whole world and beyond knows where Times Square is, right? I bought Murray Hill. Most people don't understand exactly where Murray Hill is. And if you want to know, it's like anywhere between 29th and 40th from like First Avenue to Madison is what I would consider Murray Hill. So,
That was like the
but it
most
had
New York.
3 or 4 customers. It had enough customers to kind of pay its bills,
Okay.
and Times Square was completely new.
Mm.
And I thought to myself, if they cost the same, wouldn't it be better to bring in revenue? Especially when I kind of found out my only real limit was not cold marketing in my territory, but it could work with anyone who was referred to me or knew me. And having been in business for a while, I knew I might get clients that were going to be outside of my zip code. So it was a
Mm.
question I asked the franchise a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. So I guess they were selling for basically the franchise fee because they had so few clients. Is that kind of what you were getting at? So it's basically the
Yeah,
same cost.
it was interesting. There was a bit of negotiating to it because of how it went down, but it just made more sense to me to have some revenue to work from versus like completely from scratch. And look, it's easy for me to look back at it, like hindsight's 2020. So the ability to say, if I had bought new, it might have looked like this. Because I bought that, I didn't redo some of their tool set. I adopted a lot of the things that were already in place. So I might have done it slightly differently, but I still don't regret the decision to buy with the existing clients. And I actually, so they had 4 clients. The biggest one left, and the biggest one was closest to where I live. I could have thrown a rock, and they said they wanted a smaller company. And I was like, wow, I'm like a half a person right now. I still had a foot in my old business. And and I laughed when they said it because they were thinking of CMIT as the whole, not of, this one little territory that I owned with just me at the time. And my ex-husband acting as our solo tech at the moment. So it was it was interesting, but I still have um 2 of the clients out of the 4 to this day.
Wow. That's awesome. Um,
Yeah,
something that I see all the time is like the franchises that are for sale for basically at cost, right? Like what you're describing. And people go, well, that territory must be a bad territory because this person's failing in it. What gave you
right.
the confidence that even though this guy was trying to sell with only four customers, that you could take it and grow it?
I don't know if I had the foresight to say that. I think I believed between my partner and I at the time, we would be able, with his technical knowledge and my sales ability, to turn a lot of business. I did a lot of pre work. And when I validate new franchisees, I always talk to them about reaching out because I do think that there are some keys to success when it comes to this business. It might not be for every franchise, but certainly in this business, it's like, are you involved in the community where your territory is? Now, New York City is New York City, but I had a lot of conversations with small business owners that were in my sphere of influence to find out what they were using for this and how they were doing it and would they give it to me.
Mhm.
So that was part of it. I think being next to other successful franchise owners also really helpful because I can't let a brand new franchise in my neighborhood fail. Then it looks badly on me. So we work a lot together. And I really am very thankful for my CMIT family because it's probably the biggest positive of the whole business is having other people that act as you do that sell the same services, that have the same challenges, that understand what you're going through to advise you. And I like advising. I don't see my fellow owners as competitors. I see them as peers, as friends, and like all boats rise on a high tide, right? So that's kind of the way I think about it. So I think, you know, I never thought about the idea that this person wasn't successful. The owner of this business had passed away. I bought the business from his wife, and she really didn't want the business, didn't know anything really about the business. And I never, I, you know, the owner was in the business for quite a while, and only having 4 clients did not bode well for me. But it certainly didn't hold me back. And I didn't compare myself to someone that I'd never met and had no idea what their challenges were, along with how they were gaining business compared to the way I do it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, all good points. Okay, so you chose this, and then can you talk through like training and then your initial few months, right? They're always like the most hectic, right, in any business. So can you talk to us just like the early days?
Sure. So I think, early on when I went to training, I thought I would learn a lot more about tech. And instead, I kind of learned how to sell and market, which is a place I felt very, very comfortable already because I had come from that business. So I came home and I was like, oh my God, what did I buy? Like, what am I selling? And I really like second guessed it so hard. Um, and then I ended up getting like my first small client, a challenging client because they were all Macs. They were not Windows, which are usually a little bit easier to manage. And when I say usually, I mean all the time. Um, but my first client came about a month and a half after training. And that's where I kind of got my first feel of success. And then, that followed fairly smoothly. They weren't dropping in my lap for anything, but I learned a lot. And what I love about the IT managed service business is it's not just one thing. So even though we sell the idea of an outsourced IT team and support, you're also selling hardware, you're selling projects, you are selling connectivity and sometimes phones. So there were lots of opportunities. And I think when you're brand new, especially because you're responsible to pay a royalty, you are doing everything and anything. I mean, I would have gone shopping for people. I would have fixed flat tires. I would have installed car radios, whatever it took to bring revenue into the franchise. And what's so interesting about that is my biggest client, and still my biggest client to date, came to me for an email phishing issue, not for IT support. They already had an internal guy that was handling their stuff. And that turned into my biggest client and revenue generator today. So those are opportunities sometimes when you get to be a business of a certain size that you stop looking at because you're like, well, I don't want this email opportunity. I want your whole business. And back then, sometimes my second biggest client and my first like largest signed client um, was a phone opportunity.
Yeah.
I sold them phones and that turned into the IT opportunity. So I think those are things today that I might be like, I'll give it to so and so, or somebody else can take care of that when it's not my own customer already. And I look for more of a specific opportunity today than I did then. But it was exciting. And there's just so many different ways you could step in. And then you build trust with the client. They see that you're capable, that you're, fulfilling a need, that you're supporting them. And then they give you more opportunities. And that's what happens even with clients that give us their IT support. They often will need other things that we'll find while we're serving them. And it's really, I don't know, everybody needs what we do is what I always say. And what's cool about CMIT also is that we're like an enterprise class national company. There are 300 territories at this point. So I can serve somebody locally, but there are many, many weeks. I actually have a regular engagement for the CMIT that's in Los Angeles. I sometimes use Philly. Philly sometimes uses us. I use CMIT on Long Island. So I can serve clients not only right in my territory, but all over the country with different trusted partners.
Yeah, yeah, that's really strong, and that's something I spoke to another owner, um, in Philly a while ago, and he said the exact same
Uh-huh.
thing, right?
Was it Keith?
Huh?
Was it Keith?
Yeah,
He and I are very friendly and we work together often. We're similar sizes, um, and we bring different things to the table and we lean into each other when we need advice, which is fantastic. He's also a part of my mastermind group, which is another way I think that's really, really helpful in being successful is having accountability partners. Like if I own a business by myself, I might join something like service leadership, things like that, where within CMIT, I have a family of about 12 other owners and we keep each other accountable in our businesses. We reach out to each other when we need things. If I need to create, let's say, a document somebody else already owns and is willing to share with me, like I definitely think that that leads to a lot more success when you have people that you can lean on and that can lean on you. I learn something new every time I'm with them. And that is another thing that you can't get when you're outside of a franchise. Because what other peer that's basically a competitor to you is going to give you information about how to better your business?
yeah, and those are the people that you really wanna speak with, right? Because 'Cause they're the ones doing it. Very cool.
100%.
Yeah, yeah.
It
Okay.
doesn't mean what works for them will work for you, but at least you kind of like can run through different scenarios that you may or may not have, success with. Or you can advise them. I mean, it's funny because being part of an advisory group allows for this safe space of like we're all in it to help each other. Like, we're all lifting each other up and saying, "Listen, last time that we had this meeting, you said you were going to do this. Did you do it?"
Yeah, so strong, right? You hear from other franchisees and it's like, "Oh, well, when's the last time you got help from a franchisee?" And they're like, "I never talked to the other like, I saw him at conference," you know?
Yeah.
So this is
Yeah.
really cool. I like this is something that's kinda individual about CMIT.
It's actually, I'm telling you, it's the biggest factor. And I think it leads to bringing in other CMIT owners, like brand new people that understand that value, that are like, it's like almost like the way I cultivate my team, right? You want your team to have a certain culture, and you can only drive that if you're actually representing it. So when I validate with prospects that want to buy CMIT, I'm listening to see if this matters to them,
Mhm.
right? And there's this culture of helping each other. It gives me nothing to help a brand new owner, zero. And you do it because you want to see them succeed. Because again, the more successful everybody is, the more successful everybody is.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. I like that. Okay, so let's talk more about, starting, right? Because you said your ex-husband had a job, but he was also your first tech. You didn't know anything about IT. Like, what were you doing, right? So, like, you're going into these companies and you're like, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Training must have been good enough to at least have a intelligent conversation about it, and then you call up a tech who actually knows what they're doing. Like, what does the mechanics of the business look like?
So back when I purchased, we had a program that had area developers. So let's just say, for instance, somebody owned all of New York City. They would mentor you into those type of situations where I had someone that I thought would be good and I didn't know where to go with the conversation. I lean into him. Sometimes he'd come with me. He'd send one of his texts. I would take my partner in order. And the other thing is because my territory was owned by someone else, I had a bit of their tech helping me because he was familiar with the clients. So that helps a lot. And I would say the like it made me a really, really good listener, right? Because I couldn't talk the talk at the time. And the interesting and great thing about the SMB market is I'm not working in enterprise. I'm not talking to the director of technology. I'm talking to a small business owner who just wants tech to work. They don't understand it. They don't need to know how it works. And I talk that language really well.
Mm,
So I learned all the three-letter acronyms. Like I said, most of the people at the time when I bought my franchise, a lot of the people that bought in were technical. And what they quickly realized is those people never hire. They just work on their own clients until they feel big enough to hire. Where I had to hire almost right away
mm,
because even though my partner was helping me because he was the technical one, he had a full time job. And, like I couldn't really leverage as much of his help as I would like. So I hired pretty early. The other thing that I think helped a lot for me with being successful, and I always advise new owners to do this, I hired my first tech with another franchise so we could split the payroll and the time. I ended up hiring that technician full time after about a year of that, and she still works for me today.
that's so
The
smart.
second hire I made, I sold off half of his time. So your biggest expense is always going to be payroll.
Yeah.
And so that was a great way to leverage the opportunity to have someone in my beck and call, but still not, carry um, the whole burden of the payroll.
Yeah. Yeah. Very smart way to do that. How has hiring been as you've grown in this industry? Is it easy to find techs or not so much?
So I think I mean, I'm in New York City, so it's fairly easy to find people. It's finding the right people that is much more difficult. Finding people that match your culture, that have some MSP experience potentially, that have the hunger and joy to support users. It's a lot. And I would say if I could get rid of one part of my job, it'd be hiring because I like everybody. It's terrible. I give people probably more bandwidth than I should, so thankfully, I have um, two leads on my team, along with a partner that are way better at navigating hiring. Um, and I think we have a fantastic team. I really have no complaints. But I've now pushed more of the deciding factors on that. And I acquired another managed service provider, not CMIT, 2 years ago. And with him, I really I acquired two fantastic technicians that have really helped me grow this business to a place I didn't know was possible.
Wow. So you acquire a non CMIT, but then I guess it has to now all the revenue, everything's under CMIT, right? Everything's ran
Correct.
under CMIT.
Yes.
Man, that is cool. So what was that transition like? Like how many techs did you have, and then how many did you acquire, and then how did you basically walk in and tell these customers, hey, I'm your person now.
Josh, you want all the secrets.
Are those secrets?
It might be. It depends who's listening.
Oh my god. Okay, well, you don't have to
So,
tell me. You
so
can.
I'll give you a broad overview.
Yeah, yeah.
I had two technicians full time, and a little bit of like bookkeeping, payroll, contracting. When I bought the other MSP, he had three full time technicians and a contractor. Now we're a team of 10, and the growth of that was just exponentially is more of a merge. So that acquisition bought me a partner. And even though I own the business, I have a lot of respect for him and he's got a lot of experience in the field and has been amazing. Like it could be, imagine it could be like divorce. I mean, it can be terrible. But it happened to be great. And so, I think I was probably the answer to some of the things that he wasn't doing, and he was the answer to lots of things I wasn't doing. So it's been a really nice match. And I think both of us are excited, both with working together, along with being able to act as a merge. So we've been in business together now for 2 years, and it'll be at least one more. And my hope is to extend that to longer because I think, you know, business ownership could be really tough because at the end of the day, it's all on you. And there are certain pieces and parts every business owner would like to shovel off to other people, but they need them to be responsible. And, like I think one of our claims to fame is we really didn't lose not one client in the acquisition, not one.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. I think it just also shows that you don't know what's next, right? Because going back to Keith, like he had an opportunity for an acquisition that he wasn't planning, right? It just like happened, right? And it seems
Yep.
like similar for you. So like you go into these things and you just have to kind of be able to jump on the opportunities as they come up. So that's cool. Okay. So
Never it was at like a networking event when we met and we just hit it off and we started chatting regularly. It took probably about a year till we came to like the right place and haven't looked back, no regrets, upward and onward.
yeah, very cool. So you said you're at 10 employees today. Can you kind of like explain the structure and then it sounds like a lot of that growth happened in the last 2 years, right? Um
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. I think, one of the things that it might be my superpower. I don't know. I hope it is foundationally making both companies. We had three different RMM tools. We had different strategies, different ways of doing business, but a lot of the things were similar. And I think building a really strong foundation is what has allowed us this intense amount of growth. Making sure that everything was structurally sound between our tool set, our contracting, how we go to market, and then our org chart, like kind of making sure that the right butts were in the right seats, to put it bluntly, and making sure that, if the more I'm in the office, the less business I'm doing. Like my goal is to be out of the office, whether it's traveling, learning, meeting clients, meeting prospects, networking with others, giving out business where I can, leaning into new tool sets. Those are the things I enjoy and help me grow the business. And then making sure that I can trust my team to get the projects done, to answer clients as fast as they can and solve issues as quickly as they can for them to educate, whether it is amongst each other. We have a lot of great mentoring that happens in my office. When something gets escalated, it's on the escalation resource to go back to the lower level techs and give them an understanding, teach them something valuable that they solved so that they can solve it the next time.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of laughing in here, a lot of chops busted, and I think having like culturally a sense of humor in a stress, because we're in a stressful environment sometimes. People are, like freaking out because something is busted and or something is urgent. And I think, our support has been exceptional. I think it's why most of my business comes from referral. Like nobody's Googling me and coming out of nowhere asking for IT help. They're usually Googling me because someone has referred them to me and then they're reaching out. So, I think the structure that we developed has come over time. It's not been like in an instant. And I think like we're on track to really set ourselves up for further success because of it.
Yeah, very cool. So your I mean it is very stressful, right? Like no one's computer breaks and they're like, "Oh, this is fine. Let me just take your time. Fix it whenever," right? It's like I can't do anything
Never,
until yeah.
never.
Um so your primary job is business development in sales and then kind of culture? Is that kind of what you how you'd say?
I would say, and probably a lot of account rep stuff as well. Certainly for our larger accounts.
Do you have anyone else that's doing that or is that like your seat and then you have okay,
My
so you
partner and I are both doing account management, sales, along with, I mean, I'm probably doing more with culture where he's doing more with procurement and projects. And, A lot of what we have to do in a smaller company is reconciling because we have a lot of clients with a lot of devices. So there's constant motion in, what does their infrastructure look like? What improvements would we like to see and make? I've run by three, like, kind of my mission statement is proactivity, value, kindness, right? We want to find stuff before it breaks and make sure that we, apprise the client. We want to make sure we value them as customers that pay us on a recurring basis, and we want them to value what we bring, even if it's not constant support, right? When they don't call us, we want to make sure they understand why they pay us because there's so much other oversight and security in our business. And then kindness, which is should be first sometimes. It's like I want to make sure my team treats our clients well and I want them to treat us well. So, you know, that's at its basic core. That's what I want things to look like. And I think for the most part, my team understands that. It always comes back to that. And, it's something that we live by.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. So, um, and maybe you kind of alluded to it. Maybe we should explain a little bit more in the beginning. Like, can you go exactly what is offered from an MSP, managed service provider? And then, anyway, I've got follow up questions to that, but could you just explain that
Sure.
first?
Sure. I think so, because my partner came from this space, he worried that like, was there a need to have, to be part of a franchise as an MSP? Why not just open your own? Is this foolish? And I would say the big thing besides the family and the support I got from the different mentors I worked with over time was the framework. This is what it should look like. And while I always compare the idea that if I like to bake and I owned a Starbucks, I couldn't sell my own brownies with CMIT, I have a framework to jump off from, but I could also do a little bit of my own creative solutions or solutioning, and I have. And part of that is meeting with partners, getting educated around what's next, stuff like that. So the franchise was good for particulars around support and the tool set. The biggest thing is the reach, right? Enterprise class solutions delivered with a local footprint. And then I would say our relationships with vendors are going to be better because instead of you being this $1 million entity, you're this $170 million entity. So you're going to have better support representation, better education, better pricing. It's all going to be better along with some brand recognition.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And so, but what your like, your core offering is, like you said, outsourced IT. So you're, getting them good hardware, you're making sure their operating system's running, you're getting them like what exactly like your cybersecurity, like how would you describe to a person who doesn't know what MSP is?
Back to the secret sauce, Josh. You are back to the secret sauce. So I want to preface this by saying IT is commoditized, right? Most managed service providers have a core stack that everybody else also offers, right? And at the end of the day, people hire who they like, know, and trust. And in that, you want some differentiation, right? So I would say, for the most part, imagine you have an IT employee. The expectation for that employee is they're going to answer you when you need service in the office. They're going to set up some tools to manage the devices and have some insight, and they're going to make sure that you're secure. From an MSP perspective, let's, you know, level that up. I'm going to have the best tool set to manage and monitor your office. If someone on my team dies, gets sick, or quits, I have somebody else. There is an escalation, right? So there is the ability to, if someone can't resolve something in a quick amount of time, it gets escalated to a higher level technician to assist. We are going to run projects. We are going to potentially put, feet on site as necessary. We're going to advise around solutions. We want to be I want to be almost your fractional CTO. And with that, I'm going to dig in. So if I understand an opportunity when I walk in and I say, and by the way, have this crazy rule that I put out there a lot that I kind of live by, which I call my ex-boyfriend rule, which is if I have to convince a client why they need a managed service provider, they're probably not my best client. It takes a while to educate someone. So I prefer to get clients that are leaving another MSP they haven't had a good experience with. Why? If I date somebody for a year, I want to get married and he doesn't, and then we break up, And 6 weeks later, he's engaged, right? This is the same thing. I try to sell somebody on why they need an outsourced IT person, and they say, we don't need that. And then, I do all this work, and then they move on to their cousin's sister's friend who is also in IT. So, look, it's not a hard and fast. If someone comes looking for me and they've never had someone, fantastic. But for the most part, I want to prove to somebody why we're the right fit. Now, there's also opportunities to co manage a client. They have an IT person, right? Either they're worried that person's not documenting, that person doesn't know a lot. They do the desktop support, we do the high end projects, or vice versa. We do all of the desktop support and they hire someone who manages their software, but also takes care of their servers and their network, what have you. There's lots of ways to skin that cat. But I think for the most part, in the best possible way, we are your trusted advisor. We're one of many, right? I have an outsourced CFO, I have an outsourced marketing person. All those things make me better and more valuable. And we do the same for our clients. And if we understand the vertical really well, even more so, because then we have insight into what other clients in your same space are doing and how they're doing it right or better. Because I sell fear and insurance, which totally stinks. I want to sell productivity and efficiency.
Very interesting. Okay, so that was helpful. And then kind of like something that I don't know, I'm just kind of wondering about is do you think AI is going to make this even more? Because I mean, everyone's still going to need computers. I feel like it's just computers are just going to do more stuff than they've done ever before, right? So do you see this kind of wave of AI that's going to benefit you?
So, I think this has come up so often. It's such a hot topic, right? And I love it because, I'm not in a race to deliver AI. I don't think clients should be in a race. I think there's a lot of benefits, but there's also some detriment. Um, you know, while you have all these complicated and interesting phone systems, most people that want support want to talk to somebody. Now, we have a ticketing system. Clients often put in tickets, which we resolve. If it takes me 12 hours to resolve something and they call and get it resolved right away, guess what they're going to do? They're going to call all the time. We want to make sure that we give them lots of ways to contact us. AI, in its easiest availability, besides looking things up like Google, right, is the ability to serve clients better, to serve them around the clock potentially, to give them the ability. Like I had to have my dishwasher fixed. Sears support is all AI. I made the appointment, I sent in the documentation, the picture, I got an appointment scheduled, all via an AI agent. It was seamless and perfect. I didn't need to talk to a person. And I'm sure at any time I could have been like live agent, live agent, live agent. I didn't need to. I think there's going to be a lot of delivery, a lot of smarter delivery with the ability to use AI. Right now, I'm not planning on replacing or not hiring because of it. I do imagine that people entering the market, and I have college age kids, so it kind of stinks for them. I think there'll be a lot of replacement of entry level, but you'll also have entry level using AI to be able to better fulfill a position. And I'm watching it in real time as my 23-year-old daughter utilizes it in her current job to to get tasks done that they want her to get done that she doesn't have a mentor to lean on or a higher up to reach out to. So it's been pretty interesting to watch.
Yeah. And, if someone wants that fancy phone system or ticket system or whatever, I imagine you'd be the first person they'd ask to help them implement it.
Yeah. And I think, while I'm not getting a ton of call from my clients to utilize it, we're involved in conversations around it and
Yeah.
how to best implement it so that they feel comfortable and that, their employees are already using it. We want to make sure that we have parameters and kind of guardrails for how employees within a client are using the systems and, and leveraging AI in their daily work. So you want to be able to license those things and have private and secure channels for them to utilize versus them just putting, potential IP out on on the internet for everyone
Yeah.
because AI is constantly learning based on what you're giving it.
Yeah. 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 You're just handing Sam Altman all of your secrets. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I barely want to give them to you, John.
Yeah. And Sam Altman's not paying for him either. So okay. So let's talk. What about some of the biggest challenges that you think you faced? You mentioned hiring. Is there like hiring, solid people? Is there anything else?
Hiring was difficult, understanding the technology, like, I would say still these days, I lean a lot on my texts for procurement. So when someone asks for something, I want to make sure I'm purchasing the right thing, unless it's repeatable. Like a lot of, what we purchase is, I would say 80% the same desktops, laptops, printers, like we're kind of in a lane of what we know we like. But if they need something very specific or very different, I'm leaning on my technicians. I joke around a lot about my level of technical understanding. So like, texts go by level 1, level 2, level 3. So on any given day, I could figure something out and be a 1.87, or I could screw something up and be a 1.24. So we do a lot of joking around that because I should not be the technical one, but I'm really good at being creative. I'm really good at troubleshooting. I'm really good at making sure that we're differentiating enough to have us stand out from the next MSP that's 2 doors over. Um, and so the biggest challenge is up front. We're getting enough of an understanding to not feel like an idiot when I was talking to people. Again, it forced me to listen a lot. And most technicians do not make great salespeople, and most salespeople do not make great technicians. So I knew my lane, and listening about the challenges of the client and bringing that back to someone who could solve them was my initial like best practice. Now, like I can go to on site to a client and not need a technician at all because most of the conversations are, do I like you? Do you like me? Do you think I know what I'm talking about? Am I listening to your needs? Outside of that, they never want to know how the backups work. They never want to understand how the agent does, any of the mission critical things that they do. They want less complaints from their staff. They want more productivity. They want more profit. And they hated the last guy, or they liked the last guy, but they raised the price too high, or something like that. So the challenges got less once I understood every single SMB's needs, because even if they're different businesses, their needs are very similar.
Yeah. I think you just like cracked on what a lot of small business owners who are like in the business don't understand is that like nobody cares at all about like what, yeah, how it works. Just like, how does this help me?
You care, you're doing the wrong thing. It's just like when a boss gets very involved in the details of the tech, they're not growing their own business. Like it's just like for me, I can't grow the business if I was busy delivering all the services. There's no way.
Mhm. Yep. Okay. And then what about like the territory, right? So it's extremely dense. So are you just like walking up and down the Chrysler building, like knocking on offices and be like, hey, do you guys need like,
Wouldn't it be nice if you could do that, Josh? You cannot do that. So so I asked the franchise when I purchased probably a million times because I wanted to make sure it was clear that the only thing I'm not allowed to do is cold market outside my territory. So I'm not knocking on doors in Times Square, especially because it's owned by people I love, but also because it's not what I'm allowed to do. What I do is I network a lot with my sphere of influence. I am out in the marketplace. I am delivering educational sessions. I have a vertical that we do a lot of business in. So I can work with anyone who's referred to me or is in my sphere of influence. Like if my cousin had a business in Times Square, you think Times Square is going to serve them over me? Of course not. So I asked that question a million times because I did not want to step on other people's toes. I do not want to be competitive with my fellow owners. There is plenty of business for everyone. Everybody needs what we do. And I think the people that fail in this business probably expect business to drop in while they sit at their desks. And that's, of course, not real, especially in the service business, because they got to like you, they got to know you, and they got to think you're smart. And if none of those things occur, you will not do business. You could be probably the smartest person, you could be so technically savvy, but if you're not out shaking hands, kissing babies, and throwing dinner parties, you're probably not going to do a lot of business.
yeah, so interesting, right? Like that's not what people think when they think of like a good owner for an MSP.
Yeah.
But it's obviously what needs to get done. Okay. And so what is as a new owner, like to do this, to build these relationships, you said, it's 3 months, I think you said maybe a month and a half to get to your first client. But then that client stays with you for you said two of those four are still with you 10 years later, right? So
This
like,
first client I signed are still with me 9 years later.
yeah, right. So like crazy. So like it must be like kind of a slow ramp and then it just kind of like does this or like what is the ramp up in this type of industry look like?
I think it's very random. It depends on where you are, your experience. Sometimes there are MSPs who buy into the franchise. They're already MSPs.
Wow.
So I think the road to success is understanding the fact that this is not an overnight business at all. You are not going to go from 0 to a million in a year. If you do, I will be the first one to pat your back and congratulate you for being amazing. It does take a lot of work. And if you get into this thinking you're going to replace your six-figure paycheck corporate job, you have to be realistic about what that looks like. And I did a lot of pre-work, and I still tell everyone, make sure you have enough runway that you don't need a paycheck in 24 months. Just to be safe. If you get a paycheck in 18 months, fantastic. If you get a paycheck in a year, it might not be a big paycheck. It takes a while to grow this business. But let's say, like, I always thought when I was younger, I wanted to own a restaurant. The margins in food and beverage are so minimal. And you're there, you're 24 by 7 business owner. And I'm not saying there are days where I'm disturbed on a weekend or I'm working nights, less so as my team has grown. But wherever I am in the world, I'm looking at what's happening. I'm answering questions. I'm not almost never on a site. I mean, I could be at the bottom of the ocean answering clients. It's also what I expect of my vendors. But I think you need to have a realistic view of what it could look like. No business is easy. My mother had a great saying years ago. She used to say, if it was easy, Sheldon's mother would do it. We don't know who Sheldon's mother is. We just, always use that term. And I think it's part what you put into it. It's part luck and timing. It's part who you know. If you're a person who is, very much in a vacuum, living in a new neighborhood, child free, all that stuff, maybe a way different ramp up than someone who's very involved in the community, has kids in school of school age where a lot of parents who might be in different businesses. It's where you are in the country. Like, again, my territory is vertical. Most people in CMIT have these territories that run miles that could be an hour distant from their next, potential customer. That's not like that here. But that doesn't mean it makes it easier or harder. It's just different.
Yeah, yeah, very interesting. And I think it's good to hear too of like even with this name, even where other MSPs want to be part of it, um, it still requires someone to go out, like you said, shake hands, kiss babies, do the education sessions, like whatever it is that you're talking about, to ramp up. Okay,
The other thing too is I think, you know, um, when you're considering whether or not to buy a franchise, it's great to validate with other owners. You have to be of the perspective that the most of the time, the people you're going to validate with are either similar to you, more successful, um, or potentially local. And you're not always going to hear from the people who were not successful, right? Because that's not the dream you're buying. So, you do have to weigh that in your decision. And I think doing pre work is the best way to do it. Because when you're selling stuff, if I could be like, hey, Josh, you have this pen? You got the money? Here's the budget. Here you go. I always tell people if you're afraid to ask for money, if you feel guilty asking people to spend with you, this is not the business for you. Most people in this business that are successful are the main salesperson. You're talking business owner to business owner. I have never thought about hiring a salesperson ever. And many people do because it's the hardest part of the job is getting new business. So if you're not comfortable asking for business, don't buy a business like this
yeah,
because selling pens, selling phones, selling whatever, people get to walk away with something they feel valuable with, like about. And you're already asking, do you have the $10 for this pen? Oh, you don't have it? Oh, I'm sorry, come back, or we have this payment plan, or here's sign up for our crediting. But ultimately, service is about you and they have to put total faith and trust in you.
yeah. So that's, I mean, that leads to like another question right around. You said it's not like a restaurant where it's 24/7. Um, but if it's also highly dependent on you, are you able to take vacations and the business still goes and it's still okay?
I'm on this phone call with you and I had no one's bothered me for anything yet. But I travel quite a bit. I enjoy my time off. Like I said, certainly I have seniors in my team now that can totally run this business with me aside. Could they run it for 3 months? Maybe not. But certainly going away for a week or two, um, you know, I have empowered them to make decisions. I am not a micromanager. If I don't have the right employees, then I'd hire someone who's the right person getting the job done that I don't want to do or can't do sometimes. I had a long lunch today. I had a meeting this morning. All of that without having to be like tied to my phone, to my email, to Teams, you know. And if you can have that, like, part of the whole work life balance imagery that we've conjured up, right, is can I do my job? Can I have a life? You know, and what does that life look like? And I think most people enter a franchise with a couple of thoughts. One is the dream of an established business that already has a potential client base. The other part is potentially a lifestyle business. The other potential is acquisition of more, right? You can't buy one Dunkin' Donuts. You have to buy eight or five or whatever their model is because they have this giant strategy. They're paying a lot of, they're supporting nobody doesn't know who Dunkin' is,
Yeah.
right? So, part of that is that brand recognition. But back to like, can I spend time away from this business? Absolutely. If I couldn't, I'd probably go mad. Nobody wants to work around the clock or be in such an anxiety provoking business where if we couldn't solve our clients' issues, I would hate this business. I love when I see that one of our clients loves a particular technician or had great feedback or only wants to speak to this one person because they adore them so much and they like dealing with them. Those are the things that like I know I can put my head on a pillow at night with the comfort and knowledge that my team is an extension of what I wanna put out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. How long do you think it took for you to get comfortable to step away for a week or whatever?
Hmm. Here's the other nice thing with CMIT. If I was really, like, out of the country, unavailable, and I didn't have the size team I have today, back then, I would lean really hard into one of the other successful owners, and say, "Look, I'm gonna be away for 10 days. Can my team lean into your technicians or you, to support?" And I've always had a really good experience around that. So, that didn't take too long. So I would say probably by year 3, 4, I was pretty comfortable being able to be away. Now here at year 9, it's kind of a no-brainer, and if it couldn't run itself, I would be doing myself a giant disservice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, year 3 or 4 is good, I think, right? I know will go
Yeah.
5 years without, they're just slaving away every day. So that's really
It's
good.
part of not being technical because at the end of the day, the
Yeah.
bigger problems are the technical ones, not the like, my bill is wrong, my invoice is bad, or stuff that I would normally be more of a part of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or something falling apart or an incident, things like that. But thankfully, even though I say I like everybody, I've had a good team and extension of my team in place for quite some time.
Yeah. And the other nice part of the business too, right? It's not like, I don't know, selling windows where you have to get a new client every single day to keep the revenue up, right? Like you have these guys are just paying say recurring revenue for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
okay,
it's definitely a different being in the one and done business than the recurring business. And it's funny because I have a friend who owns a mortgage business in Toronto. And in Canada, you don't buy a 30-year fixed mortgage. So the mortgage business is a relationship business. And it's not like that here, right? It could be one and done. Someone could buy their first home, get a 30-year and never look back, never refinance. So it's like in this business, a big way we get clients is referral because this is such a trust based business. So you have to know what you're doing. Clients have to rely on you, sometimes in really nerve wracking, uncomfortable situations. And that's why we're always tuning up what we do and always, like looking at the latest and greatest to either save clients money, save ourselves internal money, or anxiety and frustration. We want to serve clients around the clock where they live. So some industries are not people tied to their desks, they're running around. So if they need a support issue resolved, they often don't pick up the phone when you call back, and sometimes not even their mobile phone. So we're like, all right, we want to add text to our service business. We want to add this, we want to add that. We want to make sure we do wellness checks on clients. When we're at a client that's 2 doors down, we might stop by the other client to check in on how they're doing.
hmm,
So there's lots of different things that we do to upscale our delivery because we're in the service business, and for better or worse.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and just imagine like, me being a business owner, if my IT person like walked in and was like, "Hey," first I'd probably have a panic attack. I'm like, "Oh my god, like we're getting attacked,
Move
suspected."
on.
Yeah, and then they're like, "No, no, everything's fine. Just want to make sure, you don't have any questions or whatever." I would be I'd be like, "Wow, that's, these people care about me." So, yeah, that's
And
cool.
we think about that a lot. Like, we're not resting on our laurels. We're not sitting back going, everything's done. We are like checking in. We are making sure that clients understand the value of what we bring. I often end meetings with, what can we do better? And the perfect answer is nothing. I think you're doing everything you can do.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's like, oh, one more thing, right? I want to know that. I think, in the recurring revenue business, you get nervous about at any moment the shoe dropping. So guess what? Don't ignore the shoe. Like when I worked in a restaurant and the food was late, I went to the client, I went to the customer and I said, "Hey, I'm really sorry. Can I bring you guys more bread or can we buy you a round of drinks? I know the food's been taking quite a while." You don't want them sitting there pissed off and you're on the other side of the restaurant not checking in. We
Yeah.
want to make sure that clients feel taken care of. This is a service business.
Yeah. 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 Very cool. Okay. What what's your favorite part of the business?
Making money. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
My favorite part of the business, I
That's a great
think
answer.
paycheck. I think my favorite part of the business is when things are humming and everybody in the office is kind of good humored about something we're working on or something we've fixed and finished. Just like leaning into the camaraderie that is both in my internal team along with the whole CMIT. Like when I'm at convention and I'm excited to see other people and they're excited to see us. My favorite part is like building something and showing my 2 daughters that anything is possible. So I'm going to leave you with this, Josh. If you have other questions, let's move through them, but my favorite thing was when I started the business, I went into my kids, they were 10 and 14 at the time. And I said, Daddy and I are going to start this business. We're going to buy an IT franchise. My oldest looked at me and she goes, You you are going to buy an IT business. You can't even fix your phone. And I said, you wait and see. You wait and see what I'm going to do with this. And 100 plus clients later, at 10 years in this model, um, you know, she's pretty proud.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. It's like, it's very inspirational, I think, to show what just hard work can get. So I love it. Okay. And then so yeah, let's I think that's a good way to kind of end things. The very last thing I'm gonna ask you though is imagine yourself 9 years ago or other people who are just starting their journey into franchising. They don't know if they want CMIT or some other type of business. They're just really getting into how do I find the right business for me? What kind of advice do you have for them?
It's a great question. I think you need to like, it probably has to hit your gut at some point. I'm a real like lead with gut person. So this spoke to me. I did look at lots of different things that I was excited and passionate about more in the retail space because I felt like I was pretty good at sales. Like I always laughed that I went to school for fashion and really never worked in that industry. I think I was just good at sales. And sales is find a need, fill a need, right? It's making sure to connect, service or products with client. It's not about giving somebody something they don't need or want. So when you're going down the franchise path, you have to figure out where you are in your life and what model makes sense for you, right? Where you want to go with that. And finding a great broker is a really good way to search that out because you're not going to spin your wheels and waste as much time. You're going to say, this is where my expertise is. This is the kind of money I have. This is like, I looked at Supercuts. Supercuts was a very expensive buy in. You needed it was outside of Manhattan. Um, and I knew hiring low level, I hate to say that because it's hiring entry level hairdressers seemed like a giant challenge. And I could never just jump in and cut people's hair. I knew I could sell the hell out of retail cosmetic product, which is a big part of that revenue model.
Mm.
But I thought that would be a struggle. And if someone broke a window at 3 a.m., my supercuts, what would I do? So I kind of knew while I was excited about owning a brand name that people were familiar with, and haircuts are recession proof. Everybody goes and gets a cheap haircut no matter what, like COVID and everything.
Mhm.
But I was nervous. So I was like, I don't think this is for me. Where when I ran across CMIT and I saw everybody needs IT, everybody is being served by technology. It was not as expensive to get in. I didn't need an initial employee. I didn't need office space. There's a lot of ways I could do this without a giant investment. And it spoke to me. That said, I think you really need to do the research. It doesn't mean you're going to be successful, but you're going to find a fit that's not just like, I'm going to throw money at this. It's like, this is something I think I could be passionate about, or this is something my kids want to do, or I know I could hire for this, or I know my neighbor doesn't have anything like this. All those things should go through your mind as to, how you could work within that model
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
be
it's a good way.
successful.
Yeah, franchising, I say, is like it's like a puzzle that's missing a piece, right? And you're that piece. And like if your grooves don't fit with their grooves, like it's never going to look right. Um, and so
100%. Totally agree. It's a
y-
good way to put it.
yeah, and like your, you know, people would say, "Oh, IT," like your daughter, like no way, you can't, but that's not who they're looking for, right? They're looking for someone who's great at being out in the community and sales and marketing. So, um, yeah, obviously I support, right? Use a broker to help you with that process. And so yeah, thank you so much, Leslie.
You would, Europe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. So again, I'm Josh Emerson with Tracer Franchising. We offer free education, matching services, and research through both in-person one-on-one consulting, as well as a number of tools that we've built, proprietary tools we've built. So reach out, tracerfranchising.com, and I'd love to work with you. Thanks.